speak on the portfolios of transport and mining, and I'll touch a little bit on the works portfolio also. Transportation contributes about 9% to the country's GDP, which is about 23 billion US dollars. So it shows you how important the transport sector is to the country's growth. Most of the time we consider transportation to deal with the movement of people, but it is wider than that. It's about movement of goods. It's have to deal with land, sea, and air. Now, in the 9 years of this administration, they have gone through 4 ministers of transport. And after trying 4 ministers of transport, the sector is worse off than they got it from us in 2016. So when you look at the JUTC, and I'll just give you a little example. The JUTC in 2016 had a revenue base of about $4.1 billion. In 2024, the revenue of the JUTC was a mere $1.5 billion. In 2016, we were rolling out about 400 buses every day, between 400 and 450 buses. In 2024, there were just above 250 buses, and in some instances below. The JUTC was formed in 1988, great sacrifice by the then P.J. Patterson government, 1998, sorry, by the then P.J. Patterson administration. Great sacrifice, not only to the taxpayers, but to the private investor, the franchise holders. And it is for us, a People's National Party administration, to protect the legacy that was built in the JUTC. When you look at the amount of licenses that have been given out or been the transport authorities to the route taxis and hackney carriage operators, today we have over 100,000 Jamaicans that have been given license. No, we don't have a problem with the amount that has been given license. The issue that we have is that we have a transport sector that neither the private investors, those who have a license, and the 1 million dependent Jamaicans on public transport is benefiting at all. So when you look at the system now, there's inadequate space after giving one a license for him to park. So the transport authority issues a license. Then the same transport authority come to prosecute because not enough space has been provided. It is something that, as a People's National Party administration, we're going to put on the forefront, not only in the Kingston metropolitan area, but island-wide. Because as you have it now, is that the municipal corporations have the responsibility, with no input from central government, and where we don't have enough space, we will have to work with the municipal corporations in ensuring that these spaces are modern space for those operators and for the traveling public. Because we are not choosing Jamaica just now, because we chose Jamaica a long time ago. When you look at the KMTR, for a person leaving Portmore or Spanish Town has to wait about 2 hours to 3 hours to catch a JUTC bus. What we will do is to expand the fleet coming from Portmore and Spanish Town using articulated buses. And we have started, myself and Julian and the comrade leader, have started to do the research to see how it is that we can facilitate and to finance over the period, and how it is that we can introduce light rail from Portmore and Spanish Town going into downtown Kingston, where we're not moving 30 persons on a JUTC bus at a time, but we're moving hundreds at a time. Because if we are to increase productivity, we have to get it right where public transport is concerned. And the People's National Party administration will take the time in getting it right. We have, I mentioned it about 4 years ago in my sectoral presentation, about a rural school bus system and also a rural system to move the disabled and just general public. But we believe, since we have 100,000 Jamaicans who are investors in a transport sector, is that we have to find a way to incorporate them in a broader transport system. So we are not against the current school bus system that the minister has rolled out. What we have an issue with is how will we service that rural bus system. One, these buses are over 10 years old. Each of those buses come with over 150,000 miles, not kilometers, miles. If the minister had said that he was going to introduce 10, as others who want to sell buses to the JUTC have to do, because before a Peter Bunting, who may run a dealership, wants to sell buses to the JUTC, he would have to give them at least a minimum of 2 or 3 buses to run in the fleet to ensure that they are able to manage the road system and the load. In this instance, the minister decided to buy 100 buses without testing them on our roadways and seeing if they can work with our topography. But also, to roll out majority of those buses in rural Jamaica, as it is today, the infrastructure is not there, 1, for them to park, 2, for them to be serviced, and 3, for them to be refueled. So let us use, for example, the bus that is running to St. Thomas, to Morant Bay. That bus, once it, what we call dead leg, over to St. Thomas on the last route so that it can come back early in the morning, they have to park it at the police station. At the police station. Because the infrastructure for the JUTC is not there. And as the party leader mentioned in his own presentation, the right program, because we're going a little bit more by saying that we want private investors involved in a rural school bus system, but not only for school children, but for the disabled community. And what we will do is give them a card that they can use with the private operators. And then the private operators come and redeem it. But we will give a subsidized fare to those school children. So it's not only running from Christiana to Mandeville, but it would be from Balaclava to Mandeville, or South Manchester, right across. So it is not limited to only our town centers. So we're expanding it. But it is important that we include our private investors, because for too long we have treated our private investors, our taxi operators, as hustlers, and we want to treat them as investors in a bigger transport sector. So our promise, and there's more for me to say, but I'm presenting on Tuesday in Parliament, so I have to leave some for then. But our commitment is that in our first 100 days in government, we will present to the country a comprehensive transport plan, not only for the Kingston metropolitan area, but island-wide, which will include parking, which will include what we spoke about in the RIDE program for our school children, a comprehensive transport plan for the Jamaican people, because we chose Jamaica a very long time ago, not just now. The bauxite industry contributes significantly to our GDP and for foreign exchange. We have seen a backward trajectory from this administration on the bauxite industry, be it to issue land titles, be it to do with research, be it to protect the people who are affected mainly by bauxite mining. There are many questions to be asked, because we heard that GISCO would be closed for 2 years. It is going about 5 years now, and we have not heard a thing from the administration on what will happen to GISCO. There are many bauxite lands, and I raised it in my last sectoral presentation last year, that bauxite companies have to be held accountable for the reclamation of lands. There are too many bauxite lands that are little, if you know the law, is that if, I think it's 5% of the bauxite is left on the land, then they don't have to reclaim it. Yes? And many are leaving some on the land because they don't want to spend the money to reclaim. Those lands have to be reclaimed when we get in government and given back to the people of Jamaica. But we have to look outside of just bauxite mining, because there are other industries within the mining sector that has to be given attention. Because when you look at the type of mining that is done in Sentan, medical grade, but we don't have the facilities across the island to be able to expand. So it is something that a PNP administration will have to look at. In what are the new winners within the mining sector? And at the same time, to protect our environment. So we are making a commitment into getting the titles, the hundreds of titles that are still locked up in a safe in the hands of those who are waiting years to get their titles so that they can build on their land, to borrow money to build a decent house, or to be able to borrow from the NHT to build a house. What we don't want are for these communities that are mined out, left worse off than when the bauxite companies found them. And our duty is to protect the people of Jamaica, and that will be our first duty. I'm going to just touch a little bit on roads. Spark now spark, and reach never reach. The administration has decided to use Spark as a marketing tool, that it is the answer to our road situation. So I did a little research. The NWA would need about $40 billion annually for routine maintenance, and an additional $40 billion annually for periodic maintenance. That's $80 billion. The Spark program is $40 billion over 2 years. 90% of our road infrastructure is classified as bad. So even after the Spark program, probably about 4 to 5 roads per constituency would see any major road works done on it. And in some instances, not the whole complete road. That means the other 100 plus roads in these constituencies right across the island will not even get 1 ounce of asphalt. And I hear the Minister of Works, or the shadow in that ministry, speaking about a one road authority. Let me just say it clearly. A PNP administration sees the importance of the municipal council cooperation in maintaining our road network. But secondly, if you're going to speak about a one road authority, we have to speak about how it is that we're going to fund it first before you even change in coming under one umbrella. And we have said over and over, the only way for us to be able to do justice to the people of Jamaica by having a proper routine maintenance program is that there has to be a dedicated fund, a road maintenance fund that we can draw down to, because we will never, ever be able to finance what is required in maintaining our roads from the central government budget. We have to start thinking differently, and we are willing to think differently when it comes to road maintenance and construction. So we're proposing a quarterly bushing and maintenance program, going back to the Lengthman program, reestablishing the road maintenance fund, and for every road that is constructed, rehabilitated, that it is handed over with a maintenance program from start, not waiting until the road is mashed up, but from start, that does periodical bushing, drain cleaning, and patching. Because we owe it to the Jamaican people to give them more than they are getting right now. So, listen out on Tuesday. I'll be saying more in my sectoral presentation. But the time has come for bold leadership, and we are ready for the people of Jamaica to not do things the same way, but in a different way for the benefit of all Jamaicans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mikhail. I'm just going to give a context as to where we are with the Jamaican economy. We have had an incredible 10 to 15 year period where we have halved our national debt from about 140% to now 68 and trending downwards. And that has been a national effort started by Portia Simpson Miller and Peter Phillips when we came back into office, and has continued. It's important to note where it started. It's like a relay, but the heavy lifting started with us. But it's been unnecessary but not sufficient condition. The Jamaican economy since independence has grown on average 1% per year. The data that the PIOJ put out yesterday indicated that for the first quarter of 2025, we grew by 0.8 of 1%. The projection for the next 3 fiscal years is 1% growth. That can move the economy forward, that can lift living standards, and that can provide the resources and the tax revenues to provide the social services that all Jamaicans need. So what do we plan to do differently? And we have a 4E plan. On education, the party leader has already spoken extensively about that. So I'm going to go to next, energy. It's impossible for us to grow our economy at when the cost of energy is as high as it is. We are paying on average about US 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Important to note, when we left office in 2016, we were about 23, 24 cents. Now, a lot of people we measure corruption by how much them thief, and these people have stolen a lot. But we don't measure corruption by the destruction of institutions and the impact it has on our sector. So the reason we have high energy costs is not just, it just happens so. It's because the government has really done very little over the 9-year period to bring down the cost of energy. So when we were in office, we had issued requests for proposals for renewable energy. That was in 2013. That led to the build out of new solar farms, the expansion of Wigton, which ultimately is the only way we can bring down the cost of energy because we import heavy fuel oil and LNG. It's taken the government 8 years to put out additional requests for proposals to add new renewable energy to the grid. And those companies were selected last year, and the build-out will probably take another 18 to 24 months. And so that build-out will happen when we are in office. But you can't bring down the cost of energy when you take 8 years to issue an RFP. You have to be doing this every 2 to 3 years. And so our commitment is to bring down the cost of energy by ensuring that we add renewables to the grid, but also to look at the JPS license and to make changes to how it operates. There's something called net billing where you get a license if you generate your own electricity by solar or wind and you sell back to JPS. The rates that are given to individuals and companies are woefully inadequate and don't provide an incentive for persons to participate. We have to revisit that. We have to look at something called wheeling, where if you're a business with multiple locations, you can provide, if you can generate energy in one location, you can provide it to your other locations. We have to ensure that our special economic zones, that players in the special economic zones can generate and provide their own electricity. We also have to deal comprehensively with the issue of electricity theft, which adds about 20% to our electricity bills. We started a program back in 2014. It really didn't continue, again, mainly because of the corruption. They had to close down Nessal after them thieved that up and corrupted it. And so the level of investment needed to rewire houses, install prepaid meters, that wasn't done. They have now announced a program that they're going to try to do what really should have been done over a long period of time. So the second E is energy, and Philip Powell, who transformed our telecom sector, has really given a lot of thought and effort into what we will do when we get back into office. And it also impacts cost of living, because if I ask you what is the largest bill that you pay, it is going to be your electricity bill. The third E relates to efficiency. Government is the largest player in our economy. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is that this government has been unable to spend what is called the capital budget. You have two types. You have your capital in your recurrent pays salary and other expenses. Your capital goes to building new roads, hospitals, etc. In fact, last year, they underspent the capital budget by $19 billion out of a capital budget of about 50. We are committed to making government more efficient in what is called the public investment management system. So it doesn't take 2 years for a project to go through that evaluation to determine whether you go ahead. I think it took them 3 years to make an assessment on the Troy Bridge before work could start. You can't run an efficient economy that way. We're also going to look at the procurement system while preserving the integrity of the system to ensure that we can get projects out more quickly. Because if government can't spend its own money, it impedes the level of growth that you can have. And one of the biggest impediments to growth is how this government has structured itself, with the Prime Minister at OPM and as Minister of Economic Growth, having control of the largest chunk of ministries, agencies, and departments, which has created a bottleneck where simple approvals have to go to the Prime Minister's desk. And so projects are held up for inordinate periods of time, simply because one person has to sign off on them. So efficiency is an integral part of how we plan to move forward. We recognize that for any economy to grow, businesses need access to funding. And we have seen the nature of the banking sector in Jamaica is that it's dominated by the two large banks who control about 70% of the market. So just 2 days ago, the Bank of Jamaica reduced its interest rates by 25 basis points, which would represent the 5th reduction in the last year and a half. So they have reduced interest rates collectively by about 125 basis points. But there's been no movement from the banks. No movements, not on your mortgage, not on loan rates. And we can't grow the economy if businesses continue to pay the very high rates for capital. Now, we can plead, we can beg, we can beseech, but government plays a role. The government has access as the single largest player in the economy in terms of the deposits that are held in these institutions. We're saying we're going to implement a system where those deposits don't automatically go to the two largest banks, but we have a mechanism where there's equitable distribution of those deposits. Because even if new players enter the market, once the two largest players who control the market have access to those deposits, then there's no incentive to respond to the Bank of Jamaica when they reduce interest rates. And even, something I propose, there was some pushback and criticism, but the Ministry of Finance just 2 weeks ago issued a request for a proposal to examine a system that will ensure that we have more equitable distribution of government-held deposits, which should increase the competitiveness of the banking sector so that the banks can be more responsive to movements in the policy rates. We have also made a commitment that we will eliminate over a 5-year period the asset tax, which has been a burden on banks and which was introduced initially because we had to run a very high fiscal surplus in the 2012-2016 period, but the current government has maintained. So efficiency is a central part of what we plan to do. Our 4th E relates to our emerging economies. And the emerging economies really revolve around our cultural and creative industries, the types of industries that have made Jamaica punch way above its weight. Or musicians, or artists, or painters, or potters, or athletes, all of them who contribute significantly to brand Jamaica, but who earn significant sums of foreign exchange. It's a very informally organized industry. We are going to establish a fund of $1 billion that will support the cultural and creative industries. We're going to provide the support in terms of not just funding, but helping people with their business plans, converting ideas into a business so that they can grow those businesses. And we'll provide the technical support as well to help those industries. So we're looking at industries that can provide the platform for growth. The cultural and creative industries is one. Agriculture, but I'll leave Dayton to speak to that. Logistics. Jamaica is ideally located that when you come out of the Panama Canal, we're the first country that you hit, and then we can act as a port for many different things. Transshipment, legitimate transshipment. We do other forms of transshipment, but legitimate transshipment, but also for value-added manufacturing, for assembly of different components in electronics, etc. Ship repair, which is now taking place. So there are a number of industries that we can develop, and there was a logistics master plan that was developed when we left office, but hasn't really been implemented. And those are the kinds of jobs which are going to be the high-tech jobs where people can earn good salaries and will want to stay in Jamaica. Because Jamaica, and Peter Bunting said it, we are stuck in a low wage, low productivity, and low growth model. And we will never be able to move out of that unless we tackle the inequities in our education system, which our leader has spoken to, tackle the inefficiencies that structurally exist in the economy, and identify and provide support for those sectors which provide the opportunity for real growth. We are committed to it. We have spent a lot of time looking at what needs to be done once we get into office. And we are confident that we can move our growth rate from the 1% and 2% to 4% and 5% and 6%, earn the tax revenues that are needed so that we can improve our health, our education, our public transportation, and all the other sectors which are critical to the kind of economy that we want to create, where all Jamaicans feel comfortable to live, do business, and bring up their families. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Everybody's still with me? Let me say to our future